Hey everyone, so this is a UDL Barrier ID flowchart that we've been working with out in my district, Sanger Unified. And so if it's a helpful resource, feel free to use it. Basically, the way it starts is you're using it to help brainstorm starting places for which guidelines you should design around. So if you're thinking about an individual kid or a group of kids or just some barriers that you're running into within the instructional environment, moving through these flowcharts, these questions, is meant to help you so that you can kind of decide where are some good starting places. So the first question is, do the students care? Are they motivated to learn? So the reason for this is if they don't care, they're not interested, if we haven't captured or engaged them, then these other networks really become that much harder. And so if you're not starting with engagement, I would encourage you to start with engagement. So if kids do not see the value of whatever it is you're trying to teach, then looking for ways to design around recruiting their interests, ways to design around getting them to sustain their effort, and then ways to design around them having the ability to self-regulate, all are good starting points within your design to get kids interested and motivated to learn. So then let's say, so here the situation maybe isn't motivation. Maybe that answer is yes, they're interested to learn, but they're still running into some barriers. Then we would move down to this middle section where we're thinking about recognition, and we'd ask the question, do the students understand the concept? And a symptom of them not understanding the concept is no matter what ways we give them, no matter how many options or tools, they still aren't showing the types of understanding that we need them to show. That then is showing that this is a problem regarding or connected to representation. So this is an area of growth where we want to start designing different representations of the concepts or those symbols or the big comprehension ideas or the ways that you are going to be measuring kids' progress through concepts. It might just be that we're not representing the content in such a way where our learners can understand it. And so we need to address that by redesigning how we represent those big ideas. So the obvious question is, well, what happens if it's yes, they do understand the concept, but when I ask them to do something like writing about it, they can't. They can use their voice, but they can't write. Or when I ask them to use a specific tool or strategy that's more nuanced, now the learning falls apart. So that would be a problem more connected to action and expression. So providing your learners with options in how they show what they know. So first the question is obviously, do they have to show it through something like writing or through only one way? And if the answer is no, then being okay with your learner giving you another response. The other kind of situation, though, is if we need them to show their understanding in one way, what strategies can we give them to choose from so that they can be effective in that specific way? So these are then the guidelines, checkpoints that are all around action expression. So providing options for physical action, providing options for expression and communication, providing options for executive functioning. Then, if you notice, once you've drilled down or decided that you're going to target a specific area, then you have this form here. And this form, full disclosure, is super wordy. So that's why we don't ever start with these forms. We start with the flowchart. So let's use example of removing engagement barriers. The first things that we need to think about is, well, what are my symptoms? Is it a matter of kids are just like, they're grown when you introduce a new concept, or they ask you questions like, when will we ever use this? Or they're just not following along. They're just not engaged in any way, shape, or form. You have students maybe advocating for themselves. Do I have to do this? They don't understand the goal. Those would all be symptoms where we'd want to jump down here and jump in the checkpoints that would recruit kids' interests. We need to get them interested so that they can engage and be ready to go through the process of learning. So here, disengagement symptoms are we working on this again? Students don't want to persevere through an objective. They're focusing too heavily on the wrong facet of an assignment. So they're focusing on grammar and conventions, and when you're not worried about grammar and conventions, you're more worried about the fact that they can show the main idea and supporting details. So they're not understanding what your focus is. They're saying it's too hard, it's too easy, they're not enjoying group work, you can keep reading. I'm not going to read all of these for you. So looking at then the disengagement symptoms and thinking about your learners and the situations that you can infer are going to happen when you teach a lesson or design an experience, and then thinking through, well, which checkpoints are going to be my most bang for my buck. And then that helps you target it, because full disclosure, it's not like you're going to design a lesson that covers every single checkpoint all the time. That wouldn't make sense, especially if you're just at the beginning phases of a lesson or you're just at the end phases of a lesson. So thinking about where are your barriers and then which checkpoints are going to help you actually remove them, that is the great place to start, and that is the real design of this tool. So if you have any questions, feel free to reach out via Learning Design, but this is that tool and how it works.